Hello students, once again you're welcome to Waidsum Academy. Today we'll be looking at a topic called inheritance in biology. Okay, so we're taking biology now. We're looking at a topic called inheritance, chapter 17 of your biology textbook, inheritance. And under this inheritance we look at genes and look at the chromosomes and look at the proteins and look at the cell divisions. Okay, the cell division that's taking place, how the human new babies are being formed, and what happens to their development, and what happens to how the cells in our body grow or divide to grow. Okay, so now before we do anything, let's listen to this tutorial and see before we proceed. Okay, let's listen to this tutorial.
This video is about chromosomes, genes, and proteins. Chromosomes are structures found in the nucleus of cells. They are made up of long strands of DNA coiled around and condensed to make them visible. There are 23 pairs of chromosomes in a body cell. This is because one set of chromosomes is inherited from each parent, make a total of 46 chromosomes, or 23 pairs, in each human body cell. It is worth noting that chromosomes are only visible during cell division when the DNA becomes more condensed. DNA is coiled around tightly to form chromosomes. Gene is a short section of DNA which codes for a protein. This means it contains the instructions for making that protein. Each chromosome in the nucleus carries many genes. Some have nearly 1,000. Proteins that are synthesized in the body are responsible for your characteristics. Genes can have different versions which result in slightly different proteins and therefore slightly different characteristics. These different versions of a gene are called alleles. An individual inherits one allele for each gene from each parent. There are many different proteins which can be synthesized from the DNA in the nucleus of a human body cell, and these proteins are responsible for a huge variety of cellular functions. Examples of proteins that you will come across during your course are enzymes, for example in digestion, or antibodies and antigens of the human immune system. Protein functionality is usually dependent on the specific shape of the molecule. This is true of all three examples given here. Here is a multiple choice question like the one you may encounter in an exam. This question requires you to have an understanding of the relative sizes of the molecules in order to identify which option gives the correct size order of the structures, starting with the smallest. Using process of elimination is a good approach to a multiple choice question, especially if you aren't 100% confident. If you know that the nucleus is the biggest, then you can exclude B. Chromosomes are made up of a long strand of DNA which carries many genes. This tells us that chromosomes are the next biggest, meaning that A is the correct answer. Alternatively, if you know that a gene is the smallest, then A is the only option that can be correct. Let's look at another example of an exam question on this topic. This question has two parts. Firstly, you are asked to define the term allele. This means to describe what that term means. Secondly, you need to explain why an individual has two alleles for each gene. This means to give a reason why there are two alleles for each gene. The wording of your definition is important. Alleles are different variations or versions of a gene. This is worth 1 mark. Be sure not to say that they are different types of a gene, because that might imply that they are completely different genes for different characteristics. For example, one gene for hair colour and one gene for blood type. The reason that an individual has two alleles for each gene is that they inherit one allele from each parent. Remember that half your genetic material or chromosomes are inherited from each parent. In summary, chromosomes are made up of DNA which carries genetic information in the form of genes. Alleles are different versions of a gene, and each allele gives a set of instructions for the specific protein to be made by the cell. Proteins produced by a cell and organism determine the specific characteristics of that organism. Don't forget to check out all our other fantastic revision resources here at Save My Exams.
Okay, you're welcome again. Now, quickly, we had an overview of the gene, the DNA strand, the chromosomes, and then the nucleus, right? We had an overview of them. So let's take a look at the structure of the gene. Then what allele is also a version, an alternate version of a gene, because in a DNA or in a gene we get one allele from one parent, one allele from the other parent. So the alternate version is called an allele for a gene. So every gene has an alternative version and has two alleles, and which are alternate to each other. So we've taken a look at that. Now let's take a look at the structure of a gene. Now, first of all, in looking at the structure of a gene, let's look at the inheritance of chromosomes, the gene, and the DNA. First of all, what is inheritance? Inheritance is the transmission of the genetic information from one generation to another, like from parents to parents, from parents to their offspring. So when we say inheritance, is this continuous passage of the genetic code, genetic material from one generation to another, like from your parent to the children, from the children to their unborn children, from their unborn children to their unborn children. So this is going to continue from generation after generation after generation, because it's the flow of the blood, the family ties, the blood. That's why we say family blood is very sacred. Okay, it's very sacred. So it's that flow of the generational blood that continues to go from one generation to another. So that's why you see in some family they're very cognizant, they're very adamant to type of family you marry from, so that you don't pollute their family blood. Maybe they're known for intelligence, they're known for brilliancy, they're known for hardworking, for economical struggle, they're known for be brave and be upright in their DNA, in their gene. They know for certain characteristics which are very positive. So they're very careful how we do not pollute this family heritage. So inheritance is a very strong topic that we need to look at before we get married to opposite people in our lifetime. So inheritance is the transmission of the genetic information from your parents, okay, from your parents to the children, from the parents to the children, and also from the children in their time to their children, from those ones to their children. Like that, it's going to continue like that. So inheritance is the transmission of information, of genetic information, okay? Now, chromosomes are located in the nucleus. Chromosomes are found in the nucleus. You know, we've talked about the nucleus. The nucleus found in the cell of an organism, right? In the nucleus of an organism, in the cell of an organism, we have the nucleus. Inside the nucleus, you have the chromosomes, right? These chromosomes have all the DNA strands. Okay, these chromosomes have all the DNA strands which contain the gene, which are responsible for the coding, the genetic information that we carry. Now, then we say these chromosomes that are located in the nucleus of the cells, they are thread-like structure of a DNA. They are interwoven, they are helix, and they're interwoven, and they're thread-like structure of a DNA, carrying genetic information in the form of gene. They carry the genetic information, and that information is called gene. The genetic information is called the gene. Okay, it's called the gene. Okay, now a gene is a short length of a DNA. Just the short part of a DNA. The DNA is the whole length of it. So the short part of it is called a gene, which is carrying the code information of who we are, what the characteristics we have, the color, the eyes, everything we are. These are being coded in a DNA. So the short part of a DNA is called the short part of the DNA, which are found in the chromosome. They code for specific protein, right? So a gene, in that case, because the short part is a gene, so we can simply say a gene is a short length of a DNA found on the chromosome that codes for specific protein. A gene, every specific gene, they code for a specific protein. Now, this could be structural proteins such as the collagen found in skin cells, and also enzymes. We talk about enzymes, and we also talk about the hormones. Okay, proteins, they hormones. They make hormones, right? They make enzymes. They make antibodies. Proteins are very, very specific, and they're who we are. So, protein is very important. It codes our DNA. it's responsible. Our DNA is responsible for antibodies, responsible for the hormones, so responsible for the digestion of our food, which is the enzymes. So all of these are protein glands. So when we eat also, we are encouraged to eat a lot of proteinous food because protein does a lot of things in our body. Okay. Now we say the gene controls our characteristics as the code for proteins that play important roles in which our cells do, right? Now let's take a look at let's think about the zoomings into the structure of the cell. Let's take a look at the cell. Let's look at it and let's see how we identify each of these that we have itemized. We've mentioned the gene, the DNA strand, the chromosomes, the nucleus, and so on and so forth. And the alleles. Let's take a look at them in a structural form. Okay. Now, if you look at this, we call this the double DNA double helix. You see, this is the first helix. This is the first helix, and this is the second one. So this is called DNA double helix. This is a DNA. Okay. This is a DNA double helix. This one. Okay. And then DNA strand, this is just a strand of a DNA. Okay, this is a strand of a DNA. Okay, and then this is the nucleus where you find the DNA strand, where you have the double helix or whatever you have regarding the DNA. So they found in the nucleus. In the nucleus first, it will contain the chromosomes. Each chromosome contains this DNA strand. Okay, each chromosome contains the DNA. So first we have the nucleus, we have the cell, we can say the biggest one is the cell, and inside the cell we have the nucleus. Inside the nucleus we have the chromosomes. Okay, each chromosome contains 23 pairs of each nucleus contains 20 pairs of chromosomes, right? Contains 20 pairs of chromosomes. 20 pairs means 23 from your father, 23 from your mom. So altogether 46 chromosomes. So there are 46 chromosomes in the nucleus. There are 46 chromosomes inside the nucleus of the cells. Okay. Now in this pair, in these chromosomes, each chromosome contains the DNA strand. These DNA strands, which code the genetic information, they are found in the chromosomes. Okay. The DNA strand found in the chromosome. Now each chromosome, the part of the chromosome is called the DNA. Just a part of the chromosome, a small part of the chromosome is called the DNA. Is that okay? Now let's take a look at, we say a chromosome is a long strands of a DNA wrapped around the protein. These are the protein coding. You see from the top to bottom, this is a protein coding, protein coding, protein coding. We're going to start naming, we'll soon name how these things are coded together or how they're related. These are protein coding. So the DNA is wrapped around it. The DNA strand is wrapped around the protein itself. Is that okay? So the protein is found in the DNA strand, and we said that the DNA is found in the nucleus, right? Okay, so that's that the nucleus contains the chromosome, like we have already established, and then we say this is a DNA strand. Okay, so what you see above is the gene. We say the genes are short lengths of DNA. The genes are short. The whole of this is a DNA. Okay, the gene are short length. So if I consider from here to here, I can call it a gene, and then from here to here, I can also call it a gene. Like that, a gene. So a short length of a DNA is called a gene. So the genes are short length of a DNA that codes for protein. Their job is to be coding protein. You know, proteins are for different things. They're for forming hormones. They're for digesting our food, which are enzymes. They are for forming hormones. They are for digesting our food. They are for antibodies and antigens to fight against diseases and bacteria or pathogens in our body system. So protein is a whole lot. Protein is doing a lot. But the gene is coding the protein. The gene is coding for the proteins that will be responsible for different tasks in our body, right? So they are found in the chromosome. All this is happening in the chromosome, and chromosome is found in the nucleus of the cell. Now, what is an allele? Alleles are different versions of the particular gene, the different function of a particular gene. Every gene has a different type. Okay, so for example, if you have ABO gene for blood group type, it means it has 3 alleles, which is the I1 and IA, which is a version of the same blood, IB, which is also a version of the same blood, and IO, which is a version of the same blood. So alleles gives all organisms their characteristics. They give all organisms their characteristics. Alleles are just the different version of a gene, a different version. One gene will have like 2-3 different versions. One gene will have 2-3 different versions. So the versions of the genes are called the alleles. Each of the versions is called an allele. Is that okay? So that's the first part, looking at the meaning and the concept of the gene. First of all, of the topic inheritance, we talk about the gene, we talk about the DNA strand, we talk about chromosomes, which DNA strands which cover the protein, and then we talk about the chromosomes, and then we talk about the nucleus, and then we talk about the cell, which is the eventuality. So now let's move on to the next part of this learning. Now, before we move on, let's take a look at a small tutorial. Let's listen to this tutorial. This subtopic is the inheritance of sex, like what you become a boy or you become a girl. Okay, that's the meaning. The inheritance of sex, what kind of gender you become. So what is responsible for being a male child or responsible for being a female child? The XX chromosomes are responsible for forming a female child, and the XY chromosomes are responsible for forming the male child. So let's take a look at this tutorial before we continue.
This video is on the topic of the inheritance of sex. In most animal populations, there is generally a 50-50 split of males and females. It is important to note that there isn't a single gene for which sex somebody is. There isn't a male gene or a female gene. There are lots of differences between the sexes that need more than one gene to code for them. Instead, a whole pair of chromosomes is needed. If we look at the chromosomes of one cell, we see 23 pairs of chromosomes arranged in size order. This is the 23rd pair, shown here. These are called XX or XY chromosomes. Remember that in our body cells we have 23 pairs of chromosomes, that's 46 individual chromosomes per cell. Examiners do like to assess this knowledge. Based on the appearance of the 23rd pair of chromosomes down a microscope, females have 2 X chromosomes, denoted as XX. Males have 1 X and 1 Y, denoted as XY. The Y chromosome is the smaller one. This happens according to the sperm cell that has fertilized the egg. Do remember that XX is used to show a female and XY is used for a male. When a female makes her eggs during meiosis, she splits all her chromosome pairs. Each egg receives an X chromosome. However, when a male produces sperm, he also splits his chromosome pairs. Half of the sperm cells receive an X chromosome, the other half receive a Y. So we say that each sperm is either an X-carrying sperm or a Y-carrying sperm. Only one of these sperm will win the race to the egg and fertilise it, and this is what determines the sex of the embryo. Do note that in a sex cell the chromosome number is halved from 46, that's 23 pairs, to 23 individual chromosomes, so that when the sex cells fuse during fertilisation there will be a full set of 46 chromosomes, or 23 chromosome pairs. This couple decide to have children together. They produce these gametes that we saw just now. The gametes can combine in these combinations. Half of these would give a female child, XX, the other half would give a male child, XY. Importantly, this is the case for each time they have a child. It's not influenced by whether they have existing children or not. So the overall chance of each sex is 50%. Or this can also be expressed as 0.5 probability or 1-to-1 ratio. This explains why the population is near enough 50% female and 50% male. Here we can see an exam-style question. The population of rabbits in a habitat was counted and the split of sexes was determined as males 877 rabbits, females 882 rabbits. Use your knowledge of chromosomes to explain why the ratio of the rabbit sexes was very close to 1-to-1 ratio. So the first thing about these rabbits is the number of males and females are very similar. The command word is explained, so you need to give the science behind your observations. And the question is worth 3 marks, so a reasonable amount of detail is required with 3 linking statements. Firstly, we can see that males produce an X and Y carrying sperm for 1 mark. Females produce only X-carrying eggs for a 2nd mark. This means that there's a 50% chance of a Y-carrying sperm fertilising the egg, or you can say a 50% chance of an X-carrying sperm fertilising the egg. These points would give you 1 mark. Finally, we can explain that the population will therefore be at a 1-to-1 ratio. It's important to read the question carefully and make sure you pick up on the clues provided. In summary, the sex is determined by the sperm cell that reaches the egg. Females produce eggs with an X chromosome, whereas males produce sperm cells with either an X or a Y chromosome. 50% of male sperm will carry an X, the other 50% will carry a Y chromosome. This means that fertilised eggs are 50% female and 50% male, and this represents the overall population. Don't forget to check out all our other fantastic revision results.
Okay, so let's move on. We've heard that, and what we've learned here is that the female chromosomes are XX, okay, and while the male chromosomes are XY chromosomes. Okay, so and that the chance of having 50% is there because when the X from the male travels to the female, we have a female. When the Y from the male travels to the female, we have a male. So a male chromosome is XY. A male chromosome is XY. Okay, so that's on that note. Now let's take a look at. We say sex is determined by the entire chromosome pairs. Okay, it's determined by the pairing of the chromosomes. Okay, so that's why we will normally, or we say theoretically. Okay, theoretically it's a 50-50% chance. A 50-50% chance theoretically, but it all depends practically. It all depends on the Y part of the chromosomes from the male, how fast it travels, because it's very slow. Okay, on practical part, the Y pair of the chromosome, it's very slow, so it doesn't really travel fast. So it doesn't get to the egg first in the female. So it doesn't get to the egg first. Usually, most of the time, the S chromosome, the S part of this chromosome, the male, get to the X first, get to the egg, which is XX first. So then in that note, then we have a female. But if the Y is able to probably travel faster for whatever reason and get to the XX, then you probably have a male. So we say sex is determined by the entire chromosome pairs, okay, as opposed to most of other characteristics that are just determined by one or number of genes. Females have what we call the sex chromosome as XX, okay, XX, while the male have sex chromosome as XY, as we've established already. Now, as only a father can pass on a Y chromosome, he is responsible for determining the sex of the child. But that's on the theoretical part. Practically, he's actually not responsible. Practically is actually not responsible. I think the Almighty Creator is the one that's responsible in this regard. But biologically speaking, it depends on their journey time. Which one travel faster to get to the XX chromosomes? To get to the XX chromosomes. From the male, is it the Y pair of the chromosome that was able to travel faster and get to? It's about speed, accuracy, and timing, precision. So that determines whether the child will be a boy or a girl. Okay, so that's that for that. Now, how he does this? Because he produces or ejaculates about 250 million sperm cells during sexual intercourse. So during sexual intercourse, the male produces about 250 million sperm cells. Okay, and in this you have half of it being carrying the Y pair of the chromosome, right? Half, that's 125 million sperm, will be carrying the S chromosome, and the other 125 million will be carrying the Y chromosome. So if one of these sperm fertilizes the egg, this first 125 million sperm, if it fertilizes the egg, then we will have a female child. If out of this 250 million, half of it, which is 125 million, are carrying the this X, 125 million sperm cells are this X. So if any of this 125, first 125 million sperm, if it gets to this place, they will fertilize a female child will be formed. If any of this one, the Y, if any of this, the second half of the 25 million gets to this female chromosomes, which is XX, then a male child will be formed. A male child will be fertilized in the fetus. So this is how it is done theoretically. Now let's take a look at the main karyotypes and the female karyotypes. So we're looking at the chromosome dynamics. For female, we always have pair 1, pair 2, pair 3, pair 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. The 23 one is the X and X for female. 23 one is the S chromosome and X. It's XX. We don't call it 20. We just say the XS chromosomes. This last one is the XX chromosomes. So they're both carrying the XX. Okay. These ones are responsible for, in the body of a female, this is the pair of chromosomes that's responsible for sexual characteristics, responsible for formation of a child. The rest of this chromosome does something else. But this one are responsible for reproduction and fertilization and the formation of a child. Now, even in the case of male, similarly, if you look at it, we have pair 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. The 23rd one is responsible for in this 23rd one, for the male, they are not same size. For the female, they are both same size. For the male, it's not same size. So these chromosomes are the male sex chromosomes. One is bigger. The one that is bigger is the X chromosome. The smaller one is the Y chromosome. The smaller one is the Y chromosome. The smaller one is the Y chromosome and the bigger one is the X chromosomes. Okay? So this Y chromosome, if it's responsible for forming a male child. So if this small Y chromosome is able to travel faster, and in every ejaculation there are about 250 million of these cells, of these chromosomes, of these both chromosomes. So 125 million are these Y chromosomes. If it happens to travel and come here faster, so it will fertilize these egg cells and form a male child. If this one happens to travel faster and come and fertilize this X chromosome in the female, then it will form a female child. Is that okay? So if you look at this, these are what? Material chromosomes in red. Okay, the material chromosomes are the one in red. I said maternal chromosomes. The red ones are the maternal chromosomes. That means the one from the mother. Every child has this combination. Every human being has this combination. For example, every human being has this combination. The S color are the one from the mother. The characteristics you took from your mother. Okay? The characteristics you took from your mother are the red one. The characteristics you took from your mother. While this colored one, the green colored one, is the paternal chromosome in blue color. Let's assume this is a blue color. These are the paternal, the characteristics you took from your father. So every child, what you took from your father is represented in this diagram as your paternal chromosomes. Is in pair. They are always in pair. Each of the chromosomes is in pair with what you took from your dad and what you took from your mom for every characteristics. Okay, so we say this last one, the 23rd one, is the male sex chromosome. This one is responsible for you being a boy. This is what is responsible for you being a boy. Every other one is responsible for something else. Okay, every other one is responsible for something else. Similarly, like we said, this is S chromosomes, and this XX is responsible for female sex chromosomes, responsible for being a girl. Okay, all X cells will carry an X chromosomes. All X cells will carry an X chromosome, right? They will carry X chromosome like this. And then when the sperm cells comes to it, it fertilizes and forms a child. If the sperm cell is Y that comes to this place, then it will fertilize and form a male child. If it's the X here, this red one from the male, is what comes here again, then it will fertilize and form a female child, another female child. So every sperm cells are in pair also. They are in pair. You have the X1 and the Y1. Okay, for the Y1, half of all sperms will carry the YX chromosome, and half of all sperms will carry the X chromosome. Half of all sperm will carry X chromosome, and half of all sperm will carry Y chromosomes. If a child inherits a Y chromosome, it will become a male child. If a child inherits like this X cells, if it's this Y that comes to this X cells, they will form a male child. If it's this X that joins this X cells, a female child will be formed. A female child will be formed. Is that okay? If it's this Y, another male child will be formed. If it's this Y that fertilizes this X cell, then a male child will be formed. Okay, so I think now let's take a look at the inheritance. We say the sperm cells determine the sex of the offspring. Now, the inheritance of sex to be shown using the genetic diagram. Let's take a look at this genetic diagram, which is called the Punnett square. Okay, named according to the guy who formulated this. Now, in the Punnett square, we have mother, which has XX, and we have father, which has XY. So we have XX for mother here, the gametes, and then the gamete for the father, we have XY. So we cross for this coordinate, you have the X and you have the X. X from the father and X from the mother. So you have XX, which is a girl. And then for this coordinate point, this one, you have X from the mother and X from the father, which another girl. So in this regard, at this point, you have X from the mother and Y from the father, which makes a boy. And at this point, you have X from the mother and Y from the father, which becomes a boy. So in this case, you have 50-50 chances, meaning 50% girls, 50% boys. Two boys, two girls, or 2 girls, 2 boys. That's what you have in this case. This is called ratio 1-to-1 in this regard. Ratio 1-to-1, 50% chance a boy and 50% chance a girl. But this is only in theory. This is only in theory. In practice, the case is different. The scenario is different. You may have someone have 4 children, 5 children, they are all girls, or 4 children, 5 children, they are all boys. So this is in practice. In practice, the scenario is different. Why? Because sometimes it depends on the journey of the X of the sperm cells, whether it's the S chromosome of the sperm cells or the Y chromosome of the sperm cells that travel faster and fertilizes the egg first. Okay, so it all depends on that journey. Usually, we only represent alleles in a Punnett square. We usually use a Punnett square to represent alleles. Alleles is the version of the DNA of the chromosomes or of the gene, the different version of the gene, more specifically. So, inheritance of sex depends upon which sex chromosomes a person has. So, this is the only time we use chromosomes rather than alleles. This is when we use chromosomes when we are doing this Punnett query and all of this. Okay, so this is for this section. So I think we at this point we end this first section of this class. We've done 17.1 and 17.2, right? So at this point we close this section. Next class we'll take another part of this section.